It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Wednesday. Welcome to it. Gary, how are you?
I'm doing really good.
All right.
All right, here we come to Wednesday. What an exciting day we have ahead of us. Woo-hoo. What an exciting rest of the week. Title 42, the debt limit negotiations.
Comer.
Yeah, Comer coming out with later on today. In fact, he spoke about, what, and it looks like it's what we thought it was going to be. That it's, that because he didn't come out and say we're going to show the direct line to Biden.
Right.
What he's saying is we're going to show the basically the LLCs, the basically the setup of it to keep transferring it to different LLCs and he's made the point basically to avoid the IRS also.
Right.
Which again would be crimes, and it doesn't matter if you've got the witnesses that state that Biden got money.
Yeah.
You have in the emails that and things like that Biden got home improvements around his house.
Right.
I haven't seen where an electronic transfer of direct payment to him. But what Comer said he's going to show is basically how all the payments went through different LLCs and then made their way. I think they have completed it with other Biden family members. It seemed that is what he was saying, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow. But we'll get to all that. But first, the debt ceiling. Let's see what Kevin McCarthy had to say about it after the meeting yesterday.
What are the odds of default now after this meeting, and what happens next?
Well, the House made sure we wouldn't have default because we raised the debt limit. Now, the Senate hasn't done anything. Well, the Senate hasn't done anything. That would come down really to Chuck Schumer and the president. The House made sure we wouldn't default. We were ones who raised the debt limit. We've sent it to the Senate. We've sat with the president. I've tried to. For 97 days, he has said no. I think the only reason we are actually here today is because we passed something, but I hope you only got about 2 more weeks to try to get this done.
What are the odds of default now?
Okay, and that was McCarthy yesterday, and for some reason that audio cut wanted to repeat itself.
I think I think that is a demonstrating the workflow of the actions on Capitol Hill. I think McCarthy did the right job or the right thing there in doing that. Look, we did our job. I've been trying to sit down with the president, and the Senate can take it on, and basically the president has been debating with the House in the media. And really it hasn't been a debate. He's just been saying, we need to do something. Well, the House has actually acted. So you're going to have to, the Senate can take it up and say, no, we don't want that, and officially go through the process, but they're not.
Well, I guess this would be the question that I would. Why didn't the Senate come up with anything?
Right. No, that's
why.
That's my point.
Yeah. Why?
At least they could have said, well, okay, here we have this, and here's where we differ.
Well, no. I mean, why didn't the Senate come out because they claim they agree with the president that there's no negotiating? Then why didn't they come out with the clean bill? Say, here's our bill. We raised the debt limit to this.
That's what I mean. Right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
But why didn't they do that? And then say this is what the president and the Senate agrees on. I think it's because they don't think they can get the votes.
That's exactly what I was getting to. In order to have something, you've got to run it all the way through. And by the way, is that why all of a sudden Feinstein is back on Tuesday?
Ooh. Well, we will tell you what the polls are saying, which is why you've had some Democrats peel off and say that the president needs to negotiate. Here's the president yesterday after the meeting. Here we go, the president.
I might note parenthetically, in my first 2 years, I reduced the debt by $1.7 trillion.
That's an absolute lie. Yep. He did not reduce the debt. The debt went up. How many trillions did the debt go up? He keeps repeating that lie over and over and over again. That isn't a lie. That's gaslighting.
Yeah, right.
Because
if you didn't see that I did that, then if you're not giving me credit for that,
well, but Democrats know that's a lie. There's not one Democrat that believes that the president decreased the debt $1.7 trillion.
Well, and here's the thing. Why isn't he saying over $4 trillion? Because remember, Bernie wanted that one bill to be $6 trillion, and they got in just below $2 trillion on spending. Why didn't Biden try and use that as we reduced the debt by over $4 trillion?
But they didn't reduce the debt.
No, they didn't.
If you want to say we reduced a projected debt that was given at one particular time by the CBO before this type of spending began by the Democrats, well, yeah, but that takes too long to say. You simply, and that's the projected, this is what the projection was on this date from the CBO before we decided that we're going to start spending this. And so that could have perverted what the actual amount was. But no, the debt keeps increasing, which is, why we're in the situation that we're in. But here you go. You had the tip pollsters ask give three possible answers. Now, when you actually break this down, it's actually worse than it seems for the Democrats here. They gave three possible answers to the public. Are you ready for this?
All right.
Here we go. The first represents the president's basic negotiating position as of late April. Congress should raise the debt ceiling with no controls on spending. That is actually his current position now, not just late April.
Right.
Congress should raise the debt ceiling with no controls on spending. The second represents the negotiating position of House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Republican lawmakers. Quote, Congress should raise the debt ceiling by $1.5 trillion in exchange for $5 trillion in cuts over the next decade as proposed by the House Speaker. And the third response, which really doesn't make sense putting this in there, but we're going to read it anyway, if President Biden and Congress can't make a deal, Congress should do nothing and let non-essential parts of the government shut down. All right? So Here we go. 46% were for the congressional proposal. Biden's take it or leave it, 27%. And 28% said if the two sides can't agree, Congress should just let the non-essential parts of the government close until the deal is struck. Well, those 28% actually belong in the congressional approval, the Kevin McCarthy approval, because most Democrats aren't going to say shut down the government.
Right.
So if you take that, even if you just say, okay, we'll take just 20% of that. Instead of the 28, you give 8%, to the Democrats. You still have 2/3 of Americans agreeing with Kevin McCarthy on this. I don't remember the time. Now, it may change if they start, actually shutting down things. It may change and Republicans might get the blame. But right now, before this, I'm looking at this saying 2 out of 3 Americans agree with the responsible approach of the Republicans over the president because they know what spending has done. Mm-hmm. They've known for a while the inflation that we have we've received. So the breakdown of responses by political affiliation also shows Biden doesn't even have support of his own party's voters. Among Democrats, listen to this now, among Democrats, 45% supported the House Republican plan, just 37% supporting Biden's proposal. That's when they just asked it as 2 questions. For Republicans, the support was 50-12. For independents, 45-25. In short, no party's voters back Biden. Not even the Democrats. That's pretty amazing when you break down those numbers right there. So,
well, and really the White House doesn't care about that because they know that this issue is going to be off the table before, the beginning of summer. Something's going to happen. I don't see Biden letting this go to a point of, default or, shutting down government services or anything else. I don't see him doing that.
You know what he should say, too, Kevin McCarthy? He might have said, I don't know. Look, we're out here talking to you about this. We're out here asking questions. Mm-hmm. You notice that, of course, the president isn't taking any questions. Why is the president afraid to take questions on all of these things?
Okay, so I don't think you and I, we may have just touched on it off the air. I know you saw it, but we really didn't break it down yesterday on the show. But this is the editorial board at the Washington Post on Monday. Biden no longer does press conferences. That's not acceptable. That's the headline to the piece. And in it, by the way, they're saying what we said about the liberal media. Our assessment is they're all saying, give us the talking points. This is how it works. In fact, let me see if I can find.
Was it an op-ed piece?
Yeah, it was the editorial board.
That's the editorial board?
Yes. And here's the final line.
By the way, I didn't see this. Just so you know, I did not see this.
Okay. Because others did. I think maybe The Hill. I know Fox News covered it. Here's the final. Is it the final? Yeah, the last line. Pick up the microphone, Mr. President. The media is not your enemy. Exactly what we have been saying. We're wanting the talking points. It's not that hard. Package it up every day. Karine Jean-Pierre can hand it to us on the daily, and you step up to the mic prepared with the bigger packages and float it out to us. We'll take it and run with it. But you're not even doing that.
You're leaving us helpless. We need the talk. We need good talking points to bring to the media. We're not your enemy. We are your followers.
Exactly. Right. We mean you no harm. It's like they're talking to creatures from another planet. We mean you no harm. We are not your enemy. Is this a Will Smith movie? That's how bad it's gotten, and we were right about that. It was obvious.
We are your Sea Org. I'm trying to use a Scientology. We are your Sea Org followers.
This is the whole play. I mean, after the LA Times reporter thing with the prepped question and all of that, I don't know. Maybe they felt, the media thought, well, hey, look. Maybe they heard the message. Well, apparently not. The editorial board at the Washington Post. Dude, we're not your enemy.
Wow.
Exactly what we said.
Wow.
They're showing up every day, just wanting the talking points. This is how it works. We all know how it works. The liberal media is just wanting, give us the package on the daily basis from Karine Jean-Pierre, and then the president comes out on the bigger items and gives us the bigger talking points on those items, and we will run with it, but you're not doing that.
Please lead us.
Give us something. We're having to write about viral videos.
We don't have critical thinking minds. We're just your followers. Please give us the talking points so we can write a news story. We don't know what to write in our newspaper.
We can't write our own talking points. We don't know how.
Because we're not sure where you stand on anything.
We've been regurgitating old stories about Hillary.
Wow.
I think, I may be wrong, but I think the New York Times the other day blamed George W. Bush for something.
Wow.
That's how bad it's gotten. They don't have any new talking points from this administration, and they're not happy about it. We told you that, and the Washington Post editorial board made it official.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Logging miles during the hot summer months can put a serious strain on you and your truck's health. Did you know pollutants and allergens in the air outside can enter your cab through the HVAC system without you even cracking a window? That's why it's important to check those cabin air filters. Not only do dirty cabin air filters contaminate the air you breathe, they can also cause major damage to HVAC components like blower motor resistors and AC compressors. Have your cabin air filters serviced if you notice less airflow than usual coming from the interior vents. This is a common sign that your filters are at the end of their life cycle. Breathe easy when the air in your cab is fresh. This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, looking at that Washington Post editorial from the editorial board from Monday. Opinion, Biden no longer does press conferences. That's not acceptable. Apparently, the first headline, according to Fox, it looks like they may have changed the headline.
Yeah.
It originally was, "Why is President Biden afraid of news conferences?"
What do they think they were doing, being too hard on him?
I wonder if they got too much feedback, because that's apparently what the first headline is. Why is President Biden afraid of news conferences? It's changed because when you print it up for me, opinion, Biden no longer does press conferences. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, and another website actually had the original headline and crediting the Washington Post editorial board, but they're basically saying the same thing. That was the original headline. They're afraid of hurting his feelings.
Mr. Biden even joked at a recent White House Correspondents' Dinner about how infrequently he takes questions from reporters. In a lot of ways, this dinner sums up my first 2 years in office. I'll talk for 10 minutes, take 0 questions, and cheerfully walk away. The president said, and his team promised transparency. Instead, he is stonewalling the media. You and I asked that question. We said, my God, he actually said that, and they all laughed as if they were in agreement with it.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was the catalyst that ticked off the Washington Post editorial board, or whether they see the fact, because this is the other thing with the left, they want him to defend what he is doing. They want him to come out strong. He knows he can't defend what he's doing. Karine Jean-Pierre attempting to defend him is just abysmal. Kirby can't do it.
Yeah, Steve Guest. This, by the way, this is also how I found it with the new headline. Steve Guest, who is communications for Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz, has basically it's not a meme because it's real, but it's the picture of the headline from January of 2021. So as he's coming into office, in fact, it was January 20th. It was Inauguration Day. Here's from Reuters: Biden White House pledges data, transparency, and respect for the free press. And then below that, showing the difference, and here's where we are now, Washington Post on Monday, Biden no longer does press conferences. That's not acceptable. From their editorial board. Yeah.
Please lead us.
Exactly.
We don't know where to go. Give us the talking points.
We need talking points.
a threat to democracy if you don't download our app, Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Hurley, and I'm Gary McNamara, 866-90 Red Eye. I'm going to keep this story around here.
Yeah.
The editorial from the Washington Post from the other day. Biden no longer does press conferences. That's not acceptable, which the original title was.
Why is Biden afraid?
The editorial formerly known as Why is Biden Afraid of the Press?
By the way, I retweeted that tweet from Steve Guest again. He's communications for Senator Ted Cruz, and he did the very good juxtaposition between the headline from Reuters on January 20th of 21, the inauguration day, Trump's first day. We're going to be transparent. And then, of course, the headline from the opinion, opinion piece from the editorial board from the Washington Post. And look, you just have to be paying attention, right? You just have to open your eyes to see it. It's not.
Yeah.
But I think it warrants bringing those two things, the visual effects of it, because they're not made up headlines. It's not Babylon Bee, even though the Babylon Bee often speaks the truth through their headlines. Those were real headlines, and it tells you where this administration is. And look, we know it, but now the liberal media is up in arms. And as you pointed out on that second segment on it, they point to the media thing and where he's laughing at them, the dinner, he's laughing at them, and they're laughing. We came in, that happened on a Saturday night. We came in Sunday night, the Monday morning show, and said, he's laughing at you, and you're laughing along with him at yourselves.
Okay, I'm not
to the media.
I'm not going to put this aside now. We started on this because we played Kevin McCarthy and Biden, where Kevin McCarthy was taking question after question after question, and Biden simply was up there and just making the statement that I've cut I've reduced the debt by 1.7 trillion. We said he lied there, and we just said, well, Kevin McCarthy should be, and Republicans should be constantly saying, why are we answering all your questions and the president won't answer any of your questions? We're not talking about our public relations people doing it. I answer your questions. The Republican politicians, the Republicans in Congress, the Republican leadership, we answer your questions. We stand before the press. What is the president afraid of? And then actually bring up this. But this was all, we were talking about the polling that was done. We'll go back to that polling on the whole debt limit coming up. But let's stick with this, because I think the Democrats right now are torn. And I think this is a perfect example. Most Democrats don't want the president to run anymore. So they are, I believe, caught between a rock and a hard place. They don't want the president to hold any press conferences because they're afraid he'll just go boom. And at the same time, like the Washington Post here, they're afraid that the American public now is looking at this and saying he won't hold a press conference for one of two things. Either he can't defend anything that he's doing, he has to consistently lie, or he doesn't have the cognitive ability to even take and process questions and come up with a coherent answer. And that's where they are right now. So on one hand, the Washington Post, probably knowing he's not going to do any press conferences, will at least come out and say he should be doing press conferences. And I think they're torn between that. He's got to be doing some press conferences. He can't, because Republicans can keep pointing out, look, we're right here in front of you, and he's not. Ask yourself that question, why? And they believe it's very effective. But on the other hand, they want him, and they want the White House, whether it's Biden or not, they want the White House staff to be able to give them the talking points that they can go out and defend all the time, but they don't even have the talking points when they interview Biden himself. And so you get that Stephanie Ruhle interview that everybody laughed at as just a complete softball interview. It was a political activist basically spewing out propaganda, with the president.
Yeah.
But it was so poor, and they know, MSNBC knows that interview was horrible. They know it was horrible.
Yeah.
Because you can see by the polling itself, when you see, for example, we did the polling on the actual budget negotiations, which way more people agree with the Republican side. When it comes to spending, the federal government, they were asked 3 questions again. Does the federal government spend too much and needs to make cuts? The federal government doesn't spend enough and needs to spend more. The federal government spending is just about right. Overwhelmingly, number one, 56% said the government spends too much and needs to make cuts. Number 2, the federal government doesn't spend enough and needs to spend more. That got 17%. And the federal government spending is just about right, 12%. 15% said, oh, no. These are landslide numbers. I mean, absolutely landslide numbers when you see this for the Republicans. Then, on taxes, this is interesting. In short, Americans by a clear majority think the government spends too much and wants to see spending cut. Finally, we asked the question, this one about taxes. This is the tip poll that was done. We asked, do you support or oppose higher taxes to help pay for more spending by the federal government? Once again, Americans showed that their fiscally conservative side. 59% said they oppose higher taxes, with 20% saying they oppose them somewhat, and 39% say they oppose them strongly. Just 32% said they would support higher taxes, but the breakdown showed 14% said their support was strong, while a larger portion, 18%, said they support tax hikes only somewhat strongly. And the support is bipartisan, though it's stronger. 79% of Republicans, 40% of Democrats, and 60% of independents neither option voted for option number 1, which was that you oppose higher taxes. Neither option number 2 or number 3 got even 25% of any party's support, which was we don't spend enough or we just spend right.
Yeah.
So again, the American public knows what's going on.
Yeah.
They know what's going on. And the president can't answer it. And so when McCarthy's out there saying, look, we've got a plan here, we need to start cutting a little bit. We're just cutting around the edges. This is just a tiny bit of a mountain. They don't wish to do it. You know, the only thing the Democrats have said is, no, we shouldn't be negotiating. Well, everybody knows that. I mean, the idiocy. We played Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday saying, you need to pay your car payment. Oh, boy, she got eviscerated on social media yesterday.
Right.
I mean, it was just like, well, what about college loans?
Right. What about the national debt?
Yeah, and you said
the actual national
and
debt,
you said people need to pay their mortgages. What are you talking about? You guys are the ones that came up with the thing that if you have done things right and have a higher credit rating, you should pay for people that haven't done things right and have a lower credit rating.
Right.
And so you're all over the place. They can't defend anything. And
this is why. How do you put talking points out? How do you put talking points out right now
that aren't stupid? You can't. Yeah.
Exactly. There used to be when they would, this entire approach from the left for a long, long time. Before we got to the point of everything hitting the fan, they could just put out there, well, this is our vision. Well, they don't do that anymore. This is our agenda. We're coming after your gas stove. We're coming after your dishwasher. We're coming after all your appliances. We're raising, this is their party. We want to raise electricity rates. We want to do all these things. We want to fight for the right for children and other adults to decide that it's okay for children to have genital mutilation surgery. How do you write talking points for this stuff?
Yeah. And they write here in the editorial, happening on Monday, Biden appeared alongside Buttigieg to brief reporters on new efforts to force airlines to compensate passengers when a flight is canceled. As soon as his remarks ended, Mr. Biden turned and walked off, ignoring questions from reporters. This comes, and I think this ticked off reporters last week. This comes after the president claimed Friday he was doing a major press conference that evening, and in reality, he was doing the MSNBC softball interview.
Well, that's it, because, and that's, I had forgotten about that, but even that morning, press conference, I saw it in the alerts. The news alerts were coming across. I thought, really?
Major press conference.
Yeah, major press conference, right. And that was on the heels of the Stephanie Ruhle interview. And I thought, okay, maybe they've, they're taking the hint, whatever. They point to in the editorial board in the Washington Post, they point to the, look, we understand the gaffes. Everybody knows that he makes gaffes. But when you relaunch, he just relaunched his bid for re-election or launched his bid for re-election. This is the time that you need to be out there talking. Well, the fact is they believe he can get away with it by coming out and saying something and then turning around with no questions at all and walking away, turning his back over and over again. By the way, that's their strategy now. They were getting hit so hard when he started turning his back, and it first happened really in a big way, I think, after the Afghanistan, in the days after the Afghanistan fallout. And now they're using that as strategy. That's where we are. Remember, they had to, the images were so viral of him turning around and turning his back. They even changed it for a minute. They were having him wave or go off to the side and then pushing the media out the door before he turned around.
Yeah, exactly.
and now it's like, nope, just get him off the stage. Don't let him respond.
And, the thing is, every time he brings up something, and the reporters were saying, why is he bringing up airlines and meal vouchers and things like that? That's not a major issue with all these other things going on. But the other thing that was hilarious was, and it blew up on social media yesterday, the airlines and people that know what's going, a lot of people that say, look, I know what's going on, that the biggest problem, look, weather's always going to be a problem. There's nothing the airlines can do about it. Weather. But when you look at what most of the delays are about, the allegation now is, excuse me, it's the FAA. It's the air traffic control system. That's really the major cause of things that are outside of our control. Weather is one thing, and you're going to have breakdowns, but breakdowns aren't any greater than they were, 30, 40. This is the allegation back. I don't have the figures in front of me,
right,
but that's the allegation back. So should the federal government, when they're responsible, should they be giving refunds?
No, I think that's it.
Federal government, should the air traffic control system, when they mess up, you hear about the antiquated equipment and everything else. That's the biggest impediment, right? For example, the New York airports, they talked about this summer. They don't have enough staffing for the air traffic controllers. They're already saying don't go through New York.
Right. Remember, a couple of times they've had to keep all the flights on the ground for a couple of hours because something happened in the system. I don't know if each of those times was an FAA thing or not. I have to go back and look at that. But the complaints about the FAA have been very, very clear. And look, we all want everything to go smoothly when we go to the airport. But you start saying, well, they need to pay you for this, they need to pay you for that. Okay, when it comes to regulation, by the way, when it comes to regulation, the airlines are going to have to log everything. What is the burden of proof going to be like for the airlines and how they have to basically document everything and say this wasn't us and prove that it wasn't their fault?
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I'm telling you, we'll have our liberal circular firing squad update as Gavin Newsom does not come out and endorse reparations, says there are other things besides money. He is trying to take the moral high ground, saying we need to do other things besides money.
Right. The money is just going to be a small part of it, and by small we mean less than $1,000.
I mean, just.
How dare you put a price on this, because that would be wrong. Dude, you started it.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, you were the one. This was going to be your agenda. I wonder. Actually, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop trying to think or wonder how they were thinking. Trying to think like a liberal, because frankly, they think they're going to be the hero, but they didn't expect the protesters and the activists to come in and say 200 million.
Exactly. We'll get to that. Plus, also, the worst witness in the Donald Trump civil lawsuit, Donald Trump, coming up.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, 866-90 Red Eye. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Listen when and where you want. If you cannot listen live overnight.
And thank you.
Very quickly here, because I was going to mention him in just a moment on a different topic, but saw that Tucker Carlson's going to sue Fox.
Yeah. I expected that.
So did I. I really did, because he wants to be back in, and so he's going to sue them for breach of contract. Now, the interesting thing is, because the first thing you want as lawyers is to sue them, be able to prove breach of contract, collect your money from Fox, and still do your own somehow streaming show if that's what he plans on doing. Now, he said it was going to be Twitter. Elon Musk said they haven't signed anything.
Yeah, that had come out, I don't know, I think Thursday or Friday of last week. They've been talking about that they're building this new media empire. Twitter has, I think Elon Musk was, I don't know if he was clear about it, but he has talked about it and what the company wants to do and posting content and everything else, basically taking the route that other social media sites have done. And YouTube right now is the king in doing that. But if they can help content creators monetize in a big way, you could see them basically going after certain content creators as an exclusive. In other words, okay, you can only get this from a Twitter Blue account. If you have a Twitter Blue account, you can't get it in other places and everything else. I'm not sure about Tucker, but that's ultimately what they would like to do with a handful of big content creators, is have some exclusives on board. But we'll see where it goes. But yeah,
I think we both knew that was coming, because we knew he did not want to wait until January of, was it 2025? Right? Yeah. We knew he didn't want to wait for that, so no surprise. But this is just part of our discussion, because one of the things we've talked about is, for example, the Democrats, that when they have no self-awareness at all. And when you look at this Trump civil trial, Trump was his worst witness.
Yeah, that deposition was horrible.
That deposition, I mean, it's almost, I view that as a lawyer, if I was a lawyer, saying, oh, no, I did it. As close as you can come to it. Because remember, a civil trial is different than a regular criminal trial. Criminal trial beyond a reasonable doubt, preponderance of evidence for a civil trial.
Right.
Things are different in a civil trial, for example, in New York. If you don't show in court, and if you're not a witness for yourself, the jury can use that against you. They can view that as a negative. But after, I was sitting wondering, why wouldn't Trump testify and just come out and continually say, I didn't do it. Don't know the woman. I didn't do it.
Right. This never happened.
You have a picture with her. Whatever. You said this in the what was the tape called that he did? What are they?
Deposition.
No. The tape that he did. Were about grabbing the.
The Billy Bush tapes.
The Billy Bush tapes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's how they refer to it as. In reference to that, he said, "Look, that was just talk. Didn't mean it at all. That's not how I treat women. That's not." But when you saw the path the lawyer took him down, it was just like, what in the world? And I'll go through it. We'll use genitals for the other word here. Question, and you say, and again, this has become very famous in this video. This is the lawyer asking Trump this.
Right, during the deposition.
Right, in the video, I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet, just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. You can grab them by the genitals. You can do anything. That's what you said, correct? To Trump. Well, historically, that's true with stars. Then back to the lawyer. It's true with stars that they can grab women by the genitals? Mr. Trump, well, that's what, if you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true, unfortunately or fortunately. At this point, his lawyers have to be going, shut up!
Yeah, that was an implosion right there.
And then
because what the answer should have been, I said that and I didn't mean that, and I've never behaved that way, and it was a little bravado on my part trying to show off to Billy, who was a friend of mine, and it was just guy talk, but I would never do that.
Question, and you consider yourself to be a star? I think you can say that, yeah. And then when he, again, used the defense when the lawyer asked him about, about the, what she was, throwing against him, the allegation against him, and he stated, she's not my type, and then said to the lawyer, you're not my type either. And at that point, I'm just saying,
he's doubling down.
He's doubling down. What he is saying is, this behavior is okay, and if I can get away, with it, at the minimum here, because what he is saying here would be viewed as the sexual abuse, but not technically rape, is the point that. The legal point that was being brought up yesterday.
It's a type of assault. Yeah.
Which is why when you see how it, he wasn't found liable for rape, but he was for the basically sexual abuse and inappropriately touching her, which is where you get to battery in New York. So where they said, he was liable for is the portion of the deposition where he basically said,
it's what we do if you're a celebrity.
It's what we do. We're a star. We do these things. There's nothing wrong with it. And the only reason I wouldn't do it, to her or you, the lawyer, my gosh, the opposition lawyer is, because I don't find you pretty enough, in essence.
Right. Well, because here's the thing.
The most mind-boggling thing
it was known
in a deposition I think I might have ever seen.
It was known and or assumed that he wasn't going to be in court and wouldn't be testifying. So deposition is where, in a civil setting, a lot of the damage is done. It's where you can win or lose a case. And here, it was absolute damage done by your own words. Because here's the exchange. Their lawyer comes at you, and it's the entire intent. Every word. Damage, 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 damage. And they're walking you into a corner with yes or no questions. Did you say this? Did you do that? Did you say this? Did you say this? Do you believe that? It's damage, damage, damage. And when you turn around and go, oh, yeah, I'll see your damage, and I double it. You're not saying, I don't condone that behavior. I was speaking to somebody, and it was guy talk. And frankly, I probably shouldn't be saying that to anybody, because even talking about it, saying something like that is wrong. But that's what it was. I took a misstep with my words, but I would never and have never done that, and no one should ever do that. That's not what he said.
No.
What he said was, since the beginning of time, this is what celebrities do. What he's saying is, we get a free pass. And what the jury said is, no, you don't.
And then, because they were talking in general, this is what stars do, but then he personalized it when he said, she's not my type, you're not my type.
Right.
And at that point, he personalized it and basically said, I would do this, but not to you because you're not my type, that it's okay to do it. And if you look at what the jury found him liable of,
right,
of the rape, again, where, he's specifically what he's talking about doesn't fit what he was going back and forth with the lawyers here in the deposition, doesn't fit liable for rape, but it does fit exactly what's liable for sexual abuse and inappropriate touching, which is the battery charge. It's exactly, and the only difference in the evidence presented in the rape and or sexual abuse is Trump's testimony.
Right.
Trump convicted himself.
Yeah. Without that deposition, it would have been her word against his.
He probably walks.
Yeah. And he might in appeal. I don't know.
Yeah, he might, yeah.
But if the deposition is used, I don't know how there would be any. I don't know. I really don't know what approach his team is going to take, his legal team is going to take on this on appeal. So we'll see. But, the point where he was saying, and they were talking about the questions about, have you ever shopped at that store? You ever bought anything? And he kind of went beyond that and said, no, I don't even know that I've been there. I may have been there. I don't really shop for other people. I don't remember shopping for anyone. And, I may have gone there maybe with one of my wives. I don't know, but I don't remember being there. Okay, that part is believable. That someone like a Donald Trump would walk up in a store that hasn't been closed down, and this is what happens a lot of times. If someone is going to cause a distraction, they'll request that the stores, close down, or maybe after hours. Right after they close, they get a few minutes to do their own shopping. So you could believe something like that, but what he was trying to do is, you need to prove that I was in there. Well, then all of a sudden, they get into the line of questioning about the type of behavior that he's being accused of. And he defends the behavior.
Right.
Well, it doesn't prove that he did what he was accused of, but the jury has nothing else to work with. And this is a civil setting, not a criminal setting.
Right. Well,
there's different consideration as to what's going to come down.
He says the behavior is okay, but in my opinion, from what he said, he then personalizes it by saying, but I wouldn't do it to her or you because you're not my type. Admitting I would do this.
That's what I'm saying. You condone the behavior. Right. You're condoning the behavior, and the behavior you don't see a problem with, because your job is to convince the jury. The burden of proof from the accuser is different in a civil setting. It always is. And something like this, actually, I think the deposition, I don't know how many people are paying attention to it, but you can bet that voters are paying attention to it, both on the right and in the middle.
Yeah, I don't know how much it will be used against him in the primary, but I know it will be used against him if makes it to the general. It will be
use
big
it.
time. Yes.
Yeah, they'll definitely. I think some will use it going forward, but the damage is already done because it's out there now, and it lives on YouTube. I mean, it's going to stay there. If I don't know how many views it has, but there are multiple sources that have put it out, and so it'll be there. And those who are paying attention to it,
and that's
are the ones. Yeah. And this is what you have to worry about. There was somebody who said, "Well, this doesn't move the needle because those on the right are defending him." Which, by the way, I don't know how you quantify that. I haven't seen a poll on that. And then those on the left still hate him. Well, those on the left still hate him, no doubt. But that's not who you're trying to convince. Yes, you've got to shore up your base on the right, and I don't know what effect there may be here. Again, we have to look at a poll. But those in the middle will make a decision, and I don't know how much weight they'll put in this.
Doesn't
but
help.
It's not going to help.
Doesn't help.
It is absolutely not going to help.
I always get amazed at the lack of self-awareness on the left, and then when you see it, from, like I said with Trump, and then as I talked about the Fox News hosts with the whole thing, say what you want about it, but the fact is, whether it was Laura Hannity or Tucker Carlson, whether you love them or hate them, they were saying something different off the air than they were saying on the air, and they were saying it to other people. And putting it in writing, it blows my mind, the stupidity of that. That it blows my mind, because you and I talk about this all the time, what we think off the air, and look, we took our shots back then.
You and I actually just had the conversation that we just had in this segment about the case off the air before, and it was the exact same conversation.
Yeah, I mean, there is no, and you just can't get caught in media doing that. At least I don't believe you should. The left figures that they can do it, but I just, to me, the stupidity of that and the lack of self-awareness that I'm saying something different off the air, even if it's 50%, may not be 100% different, but it's 50%. The context of it all matters.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
And that's what amazes me, with the complete lack of self-awareness from people that are viewed as professionals, and I include, Trump in that, professional politician, business person, whatever, but the complete lack of self-awareness.
Yeah.
In the left, they've made it, it's pathological on the left. When I see it on the right, with the right or moderate right, whatever you wish to say, populist, it still amazes me at times. It really does.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you get yourself into these things? But 866-98 Red Eye.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Like the chief financial officer of any company, you have to be concerned about rising costs, especially without increases in revenue. Trying to reduce costs, let alone make sense of them, can be a complicated task. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. A penny saved could be $1,000 earned. Saving just 1 penny per mile over 100,000 miles driven annually will deliver $1,000 to the bottom line at the end of the year. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Shell Rotella. Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Friday Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, this is just beautiful because this is the ultimate in the liberal circular firing squad.
Okay.
We'll get into the specifics of it following the bottom of the hour.
Woo-hoo.
But California Governor Gavin Newsom declined to endorse cash payments for reparations in California after the panel that he put together, his panel, came up with the formula of anywhere between $360,000 to $1.2 million for a single recipient for roughly 2 million eligible recipients for reparations.
Wow.
But he has a higher morality than cash.
Oh.
We'll have that coming up.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, the last thing you do as a liberal is promote something and actually enact the procedure to start something going with a definitely far left liberal mindset. And then when they do exactly what everybody thinks they're going to do, you back off on it saying, no. This isn't about the money here. California Governor Gavin Newsom declined to endorse the cash payments, which could reach as high as $1.2 million for a single recipient, recommended by his reparations task force, telling Fox News Digital that dealing with the legacy of slavery, quote, is about much more than cash payments. Oh, so what you mean is that it's cash payments plus more? No.
Yeah.
The Reparations Task Force independent findings and recommendations are a milestone in our bipartisan effort to advance justice and promote healing. This has been an important process, and we should continue to work as a nation to reconcile our original sin of slavery and understand how that history has shaped our country, Newsom said in a statement to Fox News Digital. While the Democratic governor applauded the task force work, he declined to endorse any specific recommendation, although he pledged to continue to advance systemic changes that ensure an inclusive and equitable future for all California.
Right. Yeah. This isn't about the money.
Dealing with that legacy is much more than cash payments.
Yeah, but let's start with the cash payments. We can get to the much more later. How much do you endorse, Governor?
Many of the recommendations put forward by the task force are critical action items we've already been hard at work addressing, breaking down barriers to vote. Really?
Huh?
Are you still racist in California? When it comes to the vote? Wow. Bolstering resources to address hate? Are you still hating in California? Enacting sweeping law enforcement and justice reforms to build trust and safety, strength and safety, trust and safety. Oh, yeah, like what's going on in San Francisco and some of the other big cities in California right now. Scott Baio, do you have a comment on this? You see, he was on a beach in Florida.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be Florida.
We did. Yes, we did. We said that the other day. Strengthening economic mobility. How? By killing jobs? All while investing billions to root out disparities and improve equity in housing, education, health care, and well beyond. Blah, 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 blah. I'm still going to talk in generalities and generalities and generalities and the usual leftist rhetoric. But the problem is the activists have become very, very specific. They want millions. Following the task force submission of its final report this summer, I look forward to the continued partnership with the legislature, that's a lie, to advance systemic changes that ensure inclusive and equitable future for all Californians.
He also went on to say at this point in time and in this moment of time, we need to embrace the moment without being burdened by the past, including anything that I've said in the past.
Said James Gallagher, California Assembly Republican leader. This has been a fool's errand from the start. Democrats have promised the world with this reparations task force, and now the massive taxpayer bill is coming due. Newsom has painted himself into a corner, and he'll have to choose between signing off on a ridiculous policy that will bankrupt the state or admitting once and for all that this task force was nothing more than a political stunt.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. It's very clear it was a political stunt. But listen, if you don't start it, okay, I'm going to quote Will Smith. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing.
I was going to quote AOC. Listen.
This is the left bouncing off of walls that they built themselves.
Yeah.
When you start this noble idea of being a hero, and then you know, can you imagine William Wallace? Okay, it's been great. I know we've been talking about our freedom. You know, I got my face painted up. I'm ready. But maybe we don't go to war right now. Maybe we wait. You know, freedom. Sometimes you can have too much freedom. Did you ever think about that? You need to go sit down and think about that, lads. We're not going to attack today. Just, you know, you're leading the charge, and all of a sudden, wait, I'm sorry, did you guys say 200 million? How did you not see that coming?
Well, I like what he's trying to do, though. I like how he's trying to, I mean, it's not going to work, but I like what he's doing in the liberal circular firing squad, because all we've heard is the money, the money, the money, and the more money and the more unreasonable the amount of money has become that is impossible to do, the more you are viewed as more moral in your virtual signaling, because if you can destroy the state of California, completely destroy the state of California with the reparations that you want, whether it's $7.6 million, the $1.2 million, the $200 million. If you can destroy the state and you can destroy society, that is viewed as a greater morality than somebody who says, well, you know, maybe we should, as some of the Republican leaders said, maybe we should think about school choice. How about ensuring that the police departments, how about we don't defund the police? How about that we let law-abiding blacks in the inner city have the same Second Amendment rights as people in the suburbs enjoy? Mm-hmm. You know, how about doing these things? How about having an economy that isn't destroying jobs but is creating jobs? How about, isn't the ultimate in stopping racism, making people enjoy the same rights and opportunities that many other people have? There is a conservative way to do this. Their way is going to end up, you know, Gavin Newsom now. I mean, I do like what he's trying to say, but, well, the whole money thing, I mean, we're overdoing that. It's much more than the money, and that's why we want to focus over here and not the money. You're not going to win that one with the activists.
Well, because the question is, are you saying it's not going to be money?
Yeah.
Are you saying no money? Because that's what I'm hearing. Well, of course, we're talking there will be money. How much? See, this is too easy. You start on, because that's the idea. We're going to be the heroes. And we're going to finally get this done after a discussion on reparations that goes back decades. So we're going to do it as California. We're going to lead the way. Okay, we're waiting. Yeah. When are you going to start leading?
I want to get to the end of the summer when they submit the final report.
Yeah.
because we know the recommendations are now in, but submit the final report, he said, end of summer, and then he's willing to work with the legislature. Well, how much money?
Yeah.
1,000?
How much are we talking about?
You're going to throw 1,000 out? Because then that's all you care about. Slavery and racism is 1,000 when some of the activists are up to 200 million or 1.2 million.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be throwing an insult at all these activists, these reparations activists that wish to spend, some of them, $360 trillion for reparations payments just in the state of California. And others, $1 trillion. We're not unreasonable. We don't want to spend $360 trillion. We only want to spend $1 trillion. Float that bond issue, will you?
Yeah. Good luck.
Who's going to pay those taxes?
Good luck.
And here's the problem. When you start talking about the money that they're talking about out there, what you roughly have is anybody who's going to be a recipient is for it. Well, that means 85% of people are going to have to pay for it. And to pay for even what the reparations activists view as a moderate plan, which is the $361.2 million per recipient, that still is probably close or more, depending on whether it's 1.8 or 2 million eligible recipients, to $1 trillion. That means you would have to take out a bond issue. Your regular budget is $300 billion. You'd have to take out $1 trillion bond issue. Then remember, you can't do what the government does. You just can't pay off the interest on it.
No.
You've got to be paying off the principal. How much would taxes have to go up in order to get to that particular point? I haven't heard anything about the $5 million in San Francisco. What happened to the San Francisco reparations?
I think the activists did away with that when they shouted 200 million. But that was always going to be the problem. That's, again, the effort is virtue signaling. I care more. Well, I care more. And we said, well, then why stop at 200 million? Because when you get into the discussion of this, if the legislative body in California is going to have an official discussion, then people are going to bring charts. They're going to bring, okay, here's why I have this number as my number that I'm promoting. And they'll break it down. Well, can you put a price on it? Well, the answer is no, but you can try. And the lower the price means the less you care.
Right.
By your own party standards.
That's what it's come down to. Well, that's a great point. On everything with the left, you care by the amount of money you're willing to spend.
Exactly. And 200 million, well, no. Why not $1 billion? You're going to have to leave Bernie out of it, but why not $1 billion?
That's the question. If it was $1 billion, would Bernie go after every recipient
there's a question
of reparations
for Bernie? Bernie, if someone is promoting that the recipients should get $2 billion each. See, I've already moved on from $1 billion. What? Starting any number with the number 1, that's weak. You got to go at least 2.
Right, exactly.
$2 billion. Bernie, would you say that those who received reparations of $2 billion need to give at least $1 billion, a little over $1 billion, back to the federal government? I'm sure he would say, no, we would have some exemptions. I'm sure you would.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. It's such a zoo in California, and Newsom, by not stating, he should have at least said, I believe it's a good start, but we'll see how we negotiate this and what the state of California, can actually afford, what's actually possible here. And we said, though, but once you got this started, this was your reparations task force. Apparently, he appointed people to it.
Yeah.
And so you own this. You can't back out.
No.
Because remember, the $360,000 to the $1.2 million for, I guess, any eligible recipient over the age of 71, they view that as a lowball figure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That, okay, we're doing what we believe is fiscally responsible.
Right.
For $1 trillion.
Well, and that's, which is still far out of reach.
Imagine the interest rate, just the interest rate on that right now. If you, let's say you it's not going to happen, but if you did it by the end of the year, you're paying that interest rate, you're paying 5-6%.
Yeah.
On $1 trillion.
Yeah.
But he can't win this.
No, he can't. And Biden's running in 24. So he's not the guy there. You can't leave. Not yet. You got to stay there and deal. I think that's why you've heard from him now, because he realizes, well, my escape pod isn't working. I'm not going to the White House yet, so I got to deal with it.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
And I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. $360 trillion. God. All right, I did find an updated story on the San Francisco reparations plan.
Okay.
All right, here's a headline from the CaliforniaGlobe.com. San Francisco reparations plan installs a, quote, neo-apartheid system, end of quote. The San Francisco Reparations Committee has admitted that this is written by Katie Grimes, May 8th, 3:37 p.m. in the afternoon. The San Francisco Reparations Committee has admitted that their recommendation of a one-time payment of $5 million per black resident has no mathematical basis. In March, the Globe spoke with local San Francisco resident Richie Greenberg for in-depth analysis. Greenberg founded the successful movement to recall former San Francisco District Attorney Bowden and is now a vocal critic of the recently proposed San Francisco reparations plan. Quote, "This is unlawful, unrealistic, and an asinine plan," he told the Globe. In April, Greenberg served cease and desist demand on the offices of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. Greenberg said this in response to deliberations currently underway by the supervisors considering approval of the plan, as well as consideration of a recent request by the San Francisco County Supervisor, Sharman Walton, for an advance allocation of $50 million towards setting up and staffing an Office of Reparations. The cease and desist demanded the San Francisco Board of Supervisors cease such wasteful spending on reparations, as the plan is unlawful, unconstitutional, and violates several provisions of state and federal constitutions, the Civil Rights Act, and therefore can never be lawfully implemented. Greenberg also demanded full accounting of all expenditures related to the reparations plan between January of 2020 through the present day. The city had 10 days to respond to the cease and desist notice. The Globe asked Greenberg if the Board of Supervisors replied to the cease and desist demand within the 10 days. He said it was delivered, as we know, but they failed to honor the demand for a response. That's another story for another day. But demonstrates the patronizing and contemptuous attitude the San Francisco elected board has for citizens who have the lawful right to stop this. And then you have this Richie Greenberg says that this is apartheid, this whole reparations thing, and goes through the whole apartheid of South Africa, the racial separation that ran from 1948 to 1994. And he writes, this plan exposes the worst of San Francisco activists and is unconscionably detrimental to our city. It therefore must be rejected, he said on the Reject the Plan website. As for San Francisco apartheid, Reject the Plan lists the details. Quote, combining all provisions below, the San Francisco reparations plan installs a neo-apartheid system on a city of 45,000 black African-American residents being given super prioritized services, funding an extraordinary privilege out of a total city population of 825,000. The result is apartheid San Francisco, where 5% of black residents take the resources and the economic earnings of the 95% non-black residents, end of quote. So you're wondering how this is going to be fought in the state of California, and that's how it's going to be fought. Because it's not going anywhere.
Well, no, you can't turn away from it now if you're on the left. How do you do that? There's no way.
Well, they can't turn away from it, but it's not going anywhere legally, I don't believe.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well,
I mean, legally or financially, it's impossible.
Yeah. But this will be the interesting, I almost said entertaining, interesting part about this, watching it, because the left is going to have to burn this out. You're going to have to walk this all the way through. You can't stop now. You've got to go through the process of this. Fully, completely. And your party, Democrats, has to come together on an amount. There's no way to not go through this process, and there's no way to go through the process without coming to terms on an amount. All that has to play out. Every bit of it is going to have to play out.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to say? Oh, I'm sorry, right now we're dealing with some other priorities. There isn't one.
Nope, can't do it.
It's not a greater priority. You started this, and you're going to have to finish it.
Well, and I guess you could say climate change, but they've sort of combined the two now. Racism and climate change are sort of
there you go.
The same thing, because climate change discriminates by race.
It has a disproportionate effect on minorities,
yes,
is what they will tell you.
Right. So you've combined both together.
So all the more reason for you to do this now. Look, the icebergs are melting. And you've already said you want to do it on reparations. Do it before it's too late. There's no way around that. You're going to have to go through the process in California. What do you think? What do you think Gavin Newsom said the moment he heard confirmation Biden is running again? I bet it was a curse word. I bet it was a number of curse words. Because that was going to be his escape pod. You know, a lot of governors would say, listen, I know a lot of people ask me to run. Right now, I am focused on the people of my state, blah, 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 right? Not Gavin Newsom. Listen, I know a lot of people want me to deal with reparations in California, but I'm dealing with my run for president.
Right, exactly. Right.
is basically the message that you would have seen had he been doing that.
If I was the governor of California, now, I mean, I can't put myself in this position to begin with, but you're like, I want out because there is no negotiation on this.
Right. No.
The activists have stated, and it's been all over the news, and you have basically, the reparations activists have said, not that you should be given this, but you are owed this. This is your money. This is what's right. This is what is moral. And we have a higher morality by making the amount of reparations greater and greater and greater. You know, I think the $5 million was the one, I forgot what the total was. What was the total? It was $250 to $300 billion, I think. If you looked at everything that they were offering in San Francisco.
I was thinking it was, yeah.
Because that was just San Francisco alone.
Yeah.
Because remember, I think their budget was like 14 billion, San Francisco's?
Right.
Budget.
Annual budget, yeah.
I think I looked at it one time. Budget for 2023 would be. Oh, I don't have the. Okay, I think it's right here. $14 billion. And so they would have to take, and it would be, what was it, per family, per household, 600 and something thousand that each family would owe. So it's impossible to do it. You can't do it. I don't know if you could even legally issue the bonds for that as a city.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're never, and that's the point. You're going to, I mean, and this is, you know, I saw, maybe it was National Review, I can't remember, somebody who wrote about it and said, well, this now is this is going to be it now for Democrats. You're either for reparations into the millions or you're a racist. Mm-hmm. That this is where this is going. And what they're hoping is, like somebody like Newsom is hoping, well, okay, I'll agree to this. I'll agree to the million whatever. We know we can't get it passed. It eventually reaches the Supreme Court of the United States. They knock it down, and we can blame the conservatives for not having reparations.
Yeah. Right.
On something that we knew we could never do and had no intention of doing, but that isn't the point. The point is to get the left riled up. You know, imagine passing a bill like this. And I don't know if Gavin Newsom's going to go that far. Otherwise, I think he would have been louder on his opinion, except he probably doesn't know where to go on it. You don't know what to do on it. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't on this.
Yeah, because if you stay in the mode that listen, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And you're in that mode, well, that can only burn for so long before action has to follow it up. Mm-hmm. You have to lead your party on that. By the way, tell me on what other issue they've had a problem in coming together as a party in California. And getting things done legislatively in California. Where has there ever been an issue on the agenda items in recent years? Well, let's just say under Gavin Newsom.
And you're not talking about referendums. You're talking strictly Newsom and the legislature attempting to push something through.
Yep. The party working together to get the agenda.
Because on the referendums, they've had defeats.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But when you're talking about Newsom in the legislature, not many.
Right. Yeah, that's my question.
Nobody wants to touch this. No, that's why they asked, 80 assembly members?
Mm-hmm.
Only 3 answered yes, and the rest wouldn't give any answer
Wouldn't give
at all.
any answer
They're
at all.
scared to death of this issue. They don't know where to go on it.
Well, that's it. Because that's one of the first things is you kind of take a head count, right? And the overwhelming majority won't answer. When have the Democrats in California been afraid to answer agenda questions?
And Newsom joins those that didn't answer
Right.
because
That's a non-answer is what he gave.
Right,
Yeah.
he gave a non-answer. He wouldn't answer.
Right. When does that happen under Newsom, with Newsom being the governor and the Democrats in power? Show me the items where they didn't come together as a party, where it wasn't fairly easy as a party on legislation.
Now, the good thing is I saw Detroit's also discussing it, and San Francisco, California.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to see that these leaders of liberalism understand their racism and understand how bad their racism has been and how big their guilt is in their mind.
I was going to say, yeah, it's at least they're admitting their guilt,
At
right?
least they're admitting their guilt. Look, they're the party of identity politics. They're the party of Jim Crow.
Right.
They're the party, as we've dealt with, the identity politics right now, which judges people by groups. They still are doing the same thing that they did way back when. Because what do you think leads to racism? You stereotype. I'm going to judge you as a group that you're in, not as an individual, not by the content of your character,
Right.
not by you as an autonomous human being. So, yeah, they're guilty about their racism, and they figure that they need to pay back. And the only thing they know as liberals is money, but then they realize we can't do this.
Yep.
It's not fiscally possible. But at least they recognize, at least Gavin Newsom recognizes his racism. The legislature, the Democrats in the legislature recognize their racism. And the liberals in California have recognized their own racism and their identity politics. So that's a positive.
That's a bit of progress. Yeah.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Reading this op-ed piece by Kristen Tate, a libertarian writer and analyst for Young Americans for Liberty, talking about reparations and saying, if you look at this, if the reparations ever pass, and this goes back to April, but it was interesting because it just came up in the when I put reparations into Google, and she talks about the fact that the federal government's going to have to cover for all this, because if it ever did happen and they actually passed it, San Francisco would go bankrupt, which means San Francisco would need federal funds, which means all the states would end up paying for the reparations and the consequences of the reparations for the state of California, because people would be begging for it. I don't agree with that, because I don't think it would go that far, and there would be incredible outrage if that was the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that would be unprecedented in American history. I just don't think it'll pass. I don't think it'll pass the California Constitution.
No, that's a good point. Yeah. I think you could see the courts come back. If there's a challenge, the courts come back and say, sorry.
Yeah. And you want something to run on as a Republican, that we should bail out California for giving $5 million in reparations, and the rest of the country has to bail out San Francisco or California for their decisions?
Because honestly, when you look at it, that's their only play, is that they go so deep into a hole, then they need to be bailed out at the federal level.
Right.
They can't pay for it. They move forward with this, and there's There's no way to get through it except to get federal money, which you're not going to get. I mean, the whole thing is so thoughtless. If the governor had come out and said, listen, we believe we can enact benefits, we can enact certain considerations here and there, that's one thing. But he did not set those conditions. And he knows, you have to know, your party is going to take it and run with it to the extent of activists screaming $200 million each.
And being applauded.
Yes. Well, because that will be topped. The reason I said, well, no, we want $1 billion is because the next move will be, well, why not $1 billion?
Because Bernie says billionaires don't exist. Now that's a liberal circular firing squad.
Oh my gosh, I would love to ask Bernie that question. If the state of California or any state, you start with a reparations question,
Right.
Senator, there's been a lot of talk, renewed conversation about reparations. Do you believe that there should be reparations? Yes. How much? Well, there's been a lot of conversation, but no, how much? Because he's not going to say $1 billion.
No, you can't say $1 billion.
Are you going to say $1 million? Well, now you sound weak. Because it's already up to $200 million. Please ask him that question.
Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Pol Pot, Gary, Eric. Love 'em or hate 'em. Red Eye Radio.
I don't even know how to respond to that one.
He's smoking weed.
No.
Yeah, he's doing something. It's
Yeah.
deep voice guy's doing something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Man, I'm telling you. Pol Pot putting our names there.
Yeah.
I understand the point with the name calling from the left over the years.
Mm-hmm. That goes back a ways, though.
Yeah, the Pol Pot goes back to, 2000? I don't even know. I can't remember now. Does that go back to 2005, 2006?
Somewhere in there.
For Dick Durbin?
Yeah.
For people that don't know, the Pol Pot, the genocidal maniac from Laos. Back. What was the name of the movie that was done on that? Oh, I can't think of it. I got mind blank now. Oh, it was done with the former DA of Law and Order. Can't think of the movie. But this is when Dick Durbin compared troops down at Guantanamo Bay to the mass genocidal murder, Pol Pot. Mm-hmm. People of Illinois can, they forgive that because you can throw that kind of, thing out. But it just shows you where, again, no respect for the troops, and Durbin's still serving.
The Killing Fields?
The Killing
Is that what
Fields,
you're
yes.
thinking of, the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how far back it goes.
Yeah, so that goes back. So now, today, will today be the beginning of the end for Joe Biden? Is this the beginning of the end? And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I know that James Comer, they're going to hold this press conference at 9 a.m. Eastern. I'll still be asleep. Mm-hmm. So I'll wake up and boom, it'll be coffee with Comer. But he's going to lay out. Well, I'll let him speak. He was on Fox News and Jesse Waters last night. And so this is the latest update that he has given. And he was asked, what can we expect out of this?
Well, tomorrow, for the first time, the American people are going to see actual bank records that show wire transfers from adversaries around the world into a web of LLCs that were owned or controlled by the Bidens. And then those transfers were made back into the Biden family accounts. So this was one reason the Biden family received so many of the bank violations that are known as suspicious activity reports, because the banks knew that this wasn't normal business activity. But we're going to see whether or not tomorrow, Jesse, Joe Biden was telling the truth when he said that his family never received any money from China. We're going to see tomorrow whether or not Joe Biden knew about his family's business dealings, which we know that he said several times that he didn't. So I think tomorrow is going to be Judgment Day for the Biden administration, the Biden White House, and I'm anxious to see how the mainstream media covers this.
So it's what we expected. It's what we expected. Now, the thing is, since it's at 9 a.m., I'm going to guess that the meeting with the FBI to get the document is not going to be before this press conference. And this is, as we talk about the document that, because today is May 10th, and Comer said we have a meeting with the FBI and the Department of Justice on May 10th, and that's when we expect that this document will be turned over. And that document, according to the whistleblower, has the evidence of Joe Biden taking a bribe from a foreign national, taking money from a foreign national to do a political favor for another country. And that would be what you would want. Now, Jesse Waters never asked that question, which was one of the first questions I would have. Well, wait a minute, because he talks about, later on in this interview, and we'll play a little bit more of it in just a second. He asked him, can you go after Joe Biden? Let's play more of this interview here. Here we go.
Or covers it up. Congressman, do any of those bank records show cash going directly into Joe Biden's bank account?
Well, you'll see tomorrow, Jesse, they set this up to be as complicated as possible, to make it as difficult as possible to do two things. Number one, trace where the sender was, and secondly, to deceive the IRS. So this is like an organized crime unit, the way that they've set up this litany of LLCs, and they didn't make transfers directly to Biden families. They would transfer from one LLC to another LLC and then make a wire to one Biden, then a wire to the Biden's LLC. I mean, it's just, I've never seen activity like this, and I've been involved in banking for a long time. They were clearly trying to cover up the source of the money, and they were certainly trying to protect the big guy.
And what was the business that the Biden family was owning and operating precisely?
That's the million-dollar question, Jesse. I have looked, I have read, our staff has pored over it. We have talked to associates of Hunter Biden, people that were involved in some of these shady business schemes, and I have yet to determine one credible business. It appears to me, Jesse, the businesses were shell companies set up to launder money from foreign nationals into Biden family's back pocket.
Wow.
That's what it appears to me. But the Bidens will obviously, after tomorrow, after we release this information that we've been able to gather at a really rapid pace in less than 100 days of subpoena power, and they'll have an opportunity to explain themselves. But I can tell you, Jesse, they're going to have a lot of explaining to do, especially to the hardworking, tax-paying Americans who work over 40 hours a week and struggle to pay their bills. And then they're going to see that the Biden family, the entire family, has been putting millions and millions of dollars in their back pockets from our enemies around the world. So I think they're going to have a lot of explaining to do.
All right.
Now, and so when he ended that, my next question would be, well, what about the document? Are you going to get the document tomorrow? Because if the document shows what the whistleblower claims it shows, now you're getting this from the FBI. It's unclassified. You can release that. You don't need to go through the whistleblower process. And nobody's asking that question. That would be my next question, because that would be the ultimate, because Waters asked, Does this lead to the president? Well, it does lead to the president if that document states that, that's the evidence that the whistleblower says that the president took a bribe when he was vice president from a foreign national to do a political favor for a foreign country. At that point, you've completed the entire circle.
Well, and, he said the other day that the subpoena, he requested through a subpoena the document by May 10th. The question would be, has he received the document yet?
Well,
I'm assuming he hasn't.
Well, he said he was going to get it at a meeting. That's when he wanted it.
Right.
He said
he also
specifically
said,
at a meeting.
We've given the FBI until May 10th to produce the document, so the ball is in the FBI's court with respect to the whistleblower.
Right.
But if he had received that document, we'd know about it now.
Yeah, because there'd be nothing keeping him. There's no reason he'd have to be quiet on that. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting was when he talks about that there's so many LLCs here that because he's making the case of money laundering.
Yeah.
Because you get to the again, money laundering for what purpose? What is the purpose of the money laundering? Is it to evade? And he said it's to evade the IRS. So does he have a number of Biden family members? Now, he may not have their taxes, so he doesn't know. He doesn't know because he can't get their taxes. So is he, because he said that, he said, it was go from one LLC to the other LLC to evade the IRS. Well, you're talking tax evasion from the Biden family at that particular point. I mean, that's what he's implying, is he not? I don't know another way to take what he said in any other direction except you're alleging tax evasion by members of the Biden family.
The subpoena gives the FBI until noon today. So is he holding the press conference to say this is what we believe happened and we're on our way to the FBI to get it?
And then you hold an afternoon news conference, too, later on in the day. Because if you get it, you're going to hold some type of press conference.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't get it, you have to hold some kind of press conference or statement.
Does he believe in okay, so you set it up where the subpoena says by noon, right? You come out first thing in the morning, you have a press conference, you say, this is what we're trying to do. They have a subpoena, and the deadline is noon today, and we're on our way to the FBI to get this document. Is he trying to lead, essentially, the media in that direction, saying, and believing the media pressure would drive the FBI to respond? I don't know. I'm just asking.
I was it was on one of my over-the-air channels the other day, and I only turned it on for about a minute because I'd seen it before, but it was All the President's Men with Robert Redford, Watergate, and all the legwork that Woodward and Bernstein did in that movie, which I'm sure is the same thing that they did in real life. The government wasn't really investigating it. This was the media doing it.
Yeah.
Do these newspapers even have the potential to do it anymore? Or basically is investigative reporting from the mainstream media just being a reporter with your sources, and they call you and tell you a story and it may be true or maybe not true, and if you find another source, that's how you do it? Is there really the type of investigative reporting in the media today that you had back then, where if you've seen the movie, they were knocking on doors, they were making phone calls, and they did this for what? 2 years?
I was going to say better part of 2 years at least.
Better part of 2 years that they did this, and it was consistent. Because tomorrow, when you think about this, if he comes out with all the LLCs and everything else, and you can see that the money's been wired from this one to this one to this one to this one to this one, which is why he said the reason that what do you call it? What do they call the reports from the Treasury Department? What was that called?
The SAR?
Yes,
suspicious activity.
You know something?
Yeah.
I was thinking SARS, but you and I were talking SARS, the virus, earlier in the show.
Off the air, yeah.
About something completely different, and I just went, well, it can't be SARS. That's what Eric and I were talking about earlier.
But yeah,
it is the SARS
acronym,
report.
yeah.
Right. He said that's why they flagged it. They flagged all of these because they saw the transfer from an LLC to an LLC to an LLC to an LLC, and they became suspicious because that's what you see in organized crime. Wow. Now but you take that, you have now, tomorrow, it should be basically a flow chart of what happened. I could see a flow chart like this. You know, you see when there's a serial killer out there and the police have basically the flow chart. They go through, everything. Here are the victims, all this. Mm-hmm. You also see it in other things when you're trying to solve a crime. And it's like, okay, who leads to what? Who's there? And in organized crime, you see this. The FBI, I'm sure, has it. And you have seen it in the past in newsrooms. I'm sure in Watergate you saw it. I'm sure at the Washington Post they had a flow chart. What leads to what? Who has said what? So you can sit there and look at it and say, okay, this leads to this leads to this. Well, that part of the job will be done for you. Is anyone in the media, do they even have the investigative reporters who actually will do what is necessary, to actually go out and say, all right, forget about the government. Let's see what we can find on this story. Will there be more stories since it's going to be basically laid out to the press what the flow chart is of where the money has gone? Because at this point, still as of yesterday, not one Democrat defending and saying that the Republicans, are wrong on this. You don't hear anything. It's crickets. This is unprecedented. It's crickets. Nobody is saying anything. At some point, we talked about the Washington Post editorial about the president not giving a press conference. I think that there are many on the left that want to turn against this president, especially when this gets too hot, and move to a different candidate for 2024.
At the very least, look away and not defend him. Because the one thing that's not happening is defending him right now. They're not defending him.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. More coming up.
It's going to be a busy day.
Yeah, on what we may hear today. And then Trump has his town hall meeting. Boy, tonight.
That's not good timing either.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. We, Eric Harley over there, Gary McNamara right here.
Yeah.
All right, so here's what I'm wondering. All right. By the time that we get here to do tomorrow night's show, will I go to the website newsbusters.com that looks at liberal media, and will I see, for example, our friend Kevin Tober with the headline, "All major networks don't cover the Comer press conference"? Because think about this. We know that the mainstream media will ignore a story. I mean, that's part of the censoring, is just you ignore the story as if it doesn't exist. But think about this, because you have today with what Comer is supposed to present, which is We are showing you, we are connecting the dots to what we believe is the laundering of money through LLCs that are wired, eventually wired, laundering the money in order to avoid the IRS, which eventually ends up in Biden family members' hands. At the same time, they're waiting for the document that the Republicans say is the evidence that shows that Biden took a bribe. And so you think about today, you think about that story from last week. The Republicans, their allegation is Joe Biden is crooked and sold out the United States. Now, the reason I bring this up is I'm going right now through the different editorials from and op-ed pieces over the last couple of days from the left leading up to this. And I'm seeing Los Angeles Times, banning gas from new buildings is a good idea. Bloomberg, U.S. border crisis is already here. We can go to the Washington Post story from the editorial from the other day. Why is Biden afraid of press conferences? Why is he afraid of the media? As I go through here, I'm looking at different, the Atlantic, how to build and destroy a social network. AI machines aren't hallucinating, but their makers are. I'm going through this here. Solution to the debt ceiling is staring us right in the face, MSNBC. And that would be raising taxes. I'm going to guess. I didn't read it. New York Magazine, Democrats shouldn't freak out over one really bad poll. And I'm just going up and down through it. Let's get more here. That was actually from more of yesterday. And then Tucker Carlson is right about the stupidity of cable news. That comes from USA Today. Can Biden escape fallout from banking turmoil? The Guardian, UK. The threat and promise of artificial intelligence, Financial Times. And so I'm just going through here all the McCarthy-Biden showdown is about more than U.S. debt, CNN. And so I'm just going through it, all the different ones here. Let me just finish here as I go through it. Tucker Carlson accuses Fox of fraud and contract breach. That comes from Axios. But you cannot find an editorial or an op-ed piece analyzing what the Republicans claim they have against Biden. There's been a blackout on analyzing or criticizing the Republicans. Now, a couple of weeks ago when they were holding hearings, there was one congressman who said that all you're doing is going after Biden, but that really didn't get much news at all.
Yeah, I mean, last Wednesday, ABC and CBS on their website had coverage of Comer and Grassley. I don't know how much was on their evening news, if anything. And basically their focus was the GOP, or these two GOP members are pointing at this. They're alleging this. But I haven't seen anything on, as you mentioned, an op-ed piece or editorial.
No, you're right. We did cover that because I remember thinking, wait a minute, they're saying the allegations are implying the allegations are coming from Comer and Grassley, and they're not. They're coming from the whistleblower. Right. So we did make that point last week. So they did cover it. My point is, how can't you? You brought up Watergate earlier.
Look, you had two reporters that were knocking on doors that were really searching for answers. They were doing journalism. Well, we understand that there's a difference between way back then and today in terms of the behavior of so-called journalists. But how could you not be covering this? Now, is it a wait and see? Because I will say this. You get everything geared up, to Wednesday morning and Comer's press conference, and then later in the day, the noon deadline the subpoena that Comer issued gives the FBI until noon today to respond with the document, to produce the document. So you would be, are they waiting until it falls out, and then that way they can go, see, Comer had nothing, the FBI says there's nothing, blah, 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 blah. Now, the difference is what we've been pointing to. Typically, on something like this, especially because it is not a classified document, the Washington Post, somebody, if not everybody in the liberal media, would have a contact inside the FBI that would at least at this point let them know whether the document exists or not, so that they could come out and trash Grassley and Comer, in their way. Say this is false, but you're not hearing any of that from
nothing.
And if it didn't exist, we would know about it by now through those types of leaks. So that tells me possibly that it does exist and they know it, and their contacts are saying, yeah, it does exist, but we haven't laid eyes on it. You're just throwing out all the possibilities. And so the media is looking at it going, oh, my gosh. Are they waiting for this to be the big drop? Now, today may not be that big revelation. It may just be the allegations and what Comer is leading in terms of what he claims the FBI has, what the whistleblower is saying, and all of that, versus the response by the FBI, which, again, to produce that document, the subpoena gave them until noon today. So maybe they're, I don't know, but if that document did not exist, if there wasn't something to this, we would know it by now. Even if the document existed, but it's a nothing burger, we'd know by now.
Well, the FBI has had the laptop since the end of 2019.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Wow.
So they've had it.
They've had it pre-COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, they had the laptop pre-COVID. And so you think about that this is potentially everything coming out is super embarrassing to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
So the potential is there to be extremely embarrassing to law enforcement that you guys are basically covering up. Now, that's part of the other allegations.
Yeah.
The other part of the allegations are that, Blinken set in motion, the entire, letter. He was the impetus for the 51 intelligence agents. And then the story came out yesterday, the CIA. Now, the new report is the CIA was helping to pass this thing around. And the goal, as we know, that was written by Morell was to, with his communication with Blinken, was to give Biden talking points here. Mm-hmm. So this thing was purely political at that point. The other point is the story Andrew McCarthy pointed out where Blinken says he never emailed Hunter Biden. And this is when, when the vice president was, when Biden was still vice president. And they say the laptop shows he was lying on that he did email him because that's from the laptop. Mm-hmm. Also, John Kerry claimed he didn't know what was going on. Yet his nephew, the Heinz, was part of the whole thing with and they found out later that Kerry actually did know that I think it's his nephew, son-in-law, whoever it was involved in it. Mm-hmm. And so you've got all of this. We've known the FBI is known for over 3 years. The public has known for well over 2 years that that this was taking place, that Hunter Biden was getting money, and the only place it led, remember, from the very beginning with Bob Ulinsky, it all leads to Joe. Mm-hmm. And so we've known it for 2 years. The media hasn't investigated this like the Washington Post investigated Watergate.
No.
They haven't done this. Will they start today because they've been handed the roadmap? Is the roadmap so clear where you see, will he be able to show it went from this country to this LLC, passed on to this LLC, passed on to this LLC that ended up to this particular Biden? because what he claimed is that the money trail leads to other Bidens, but he didn't say that a money trail led specifically of what he has today to Joe Biden. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you enrich yourself or enrich your family. It's still influence peddling. And if that document is released today, if the subpoena in the meeting, if they give it to Comer, and it is what they say it is, that will be news by tonight. And you're looking at today could be the beginning of the end of the Biden administration.
Quite possible.
You see that I think Hugh Hewitt was on Fox News yesterday and said he believes that Biden will pull a LBJ and pull out in March, because LBJ pulled out in March of 1968. And I think his numbers were like 38 approval, and Biden's is 36. I think he was looking at the one poll. He goes, so he believes Biden, he believes his family will not let him run, that his cognitive problems are so bad that by March of next year he will pull out, but he's not going to pull out till next year.
I would think if the family already knows that, if they already know of the issues, and I would think we'd hear that by the end of this year. And in today's world, if you think about it, I mean, and Hewitt could be right. I mean, I don't know, but if that is the case, if the family is reviewing that, now the family also is reviewing their own liability here, right? I mean, how many family members are we talking about now? I mean, Thanksgiving is going to be awkward.
Anywhere between 9 and 12.
Right.
Right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what they
exactly.
say. And then the story that Devin Archer is trying to appeal his conviction, and people around him are telling him, you need to save, you don't want to go to jail?
Right.
Well,
save yourself, you can do this.
Then you save yourself. But who's that coming from? Is that coming? It seemed the stories I've read say it's coming from his friends and people close to him.
Right.
It's not law enforcement trying to flip him.
Right. Yeah. If they don't have any interest in flipping him, then there's no.
And that's the other thing with all of this here that we just don't know. You know, the laptop has been sitting. The FBI's had it for 3 years.
Right.
They didn't do anything with it.
Right.
They didn't do anything with, you haven't seen that. Well, they might have. We don't know about it.
Right.
But if this document exists, the FBI is going to want to get out in front and say, look, we've been looking at all this and we found it was false, or we found it was true, or we've been investigating it, or this is part of David Weiss's thing. They've got to say something that this document exists, because if they give it to Comer, he's going to say, look, this is what's going on. And I asked the FBI, have you been investigating this? And they said, we can't comment on any investigation that might be going on.
Okay, so to bring this very imperfect political storm together, add to it the fact that many analysts believe that right now the GOP has a very good shot at taking the Senate in 24. Yeah, we've heard that before, but the numbers are different for 24 than they were for this past midterm.
And they're going to try to pick candidates who they believe can win. I saw that.
So
yesterday.
then, if Biden runs, and let's just say he wins, and the GOP has the Senate and the House, it is far from over. If we don't learn everything by then.
866-90 Red Eye.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. To determine a driver's compliance, safety, accountability, or CSA score, safety event data is recorded and compared against that of other drivers. Drivers are given a CSA score, but unlike motor carrier scores, driver scores are only visible to enforcement officers during an audit. However, drivers' most recent 5 years of crash data and 3 years of roadside inspection data is made available to potential employers via the pre-employment screening program. So it's a good idea for drivers to review their online PSP record from time to time. A request for data review can be submitted via data queues to have errors corrected or to have a non-preventable crash designation indicated for a crash. In the event a current or previous carrier is audited, records on drivers with high CSA scores will be targeted first, but individual drivers are not subject to CSA interventions like motor carriers. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Or is the media just going to cover all the different bad news, what's going on at the border? You were telling me some of the projections for inflation really unchanged from last month, which isn't going to be good. You know, there's so many negative things going on, or focusing on the debt ceiling and just ignoring the Comer press conference. I don't see how you can ignore it. There's too much. When you talk about news, influence peddling, and when you start connecting the dots on it, that's something that the American public is really interested in.
Well, the liberal media definitely wants to paint this, or is hoping, I guess, maybe that Comer is going to fail, that the efforts are going to fail, that it's going to produce nothing, that the document's going to show nothing, and then ultimately the whistleblower has nothing. And then they can point and say, see, the GOP, blah, 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 overplayed their hand and blah, 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 blah. Now,
they will say that whether there will be some media outlets that will say that whether there's substance to this or not.
Exactly where I was going.
Exactly
where I was going, because this is the thing. This is what I suspect will be the approach by a number of the liberal media outlets, and that is, even if something is there, they're going to say, oh, they're alleging this, but this won't be provable, that won't be provable, there's no way, it's going to be one person's word against, and then they're probably going to have to say somewhere along the way, but who knows who the whistleblower is? Maybe they're a Trump supporter, maybe and it will be that attempt, whether there's something there or not. And I think that's but that's the uphill battle you have when you have activists in newsrooms.
The only advantage the Republicans have here is this isn't their data.
No.
This is the Treasury Department. Mm-hmm. These are the banks and what the banks gave to the Treasury Department, and either they're correct or they're not. Mm-hmm. And the transfer, the SARs that were created because of this, if you see the money flowing and it flows from the LLCs, and you see that the money then flows to an account that the Bidens had access to, that's all you really need at that point.
Yeah.
Whatever Biden it was. And now, with Comer saying it's 9 and maybe 12, well, if you can have that flow chart that looks like an octopus with all these different financial tentacles, there's a problem there that is hard to ignore.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. So this is the Washington Post. Airlines, FAA, weather, data shows fault for delayed and canceled flights. This is because of the president 2 days ago. Talking about that airlines must refund, and not refund, but they must provide hotel and food vouchers and everything else.
Pay you for your time, your transportation, and all of it if it's something that is their fault.
Federal data shows that issues within the control of airlines have consistently been the biggest cause of the delayed flights and a growing share of cancellations since the beginning of the pandemic. President Biden took aim at those disrupted flights Monday, calling on the airlines to provide compensation. We know how frustrating delays have been, Biden said at the White House. In response, Airlines for America, a trade group for major airlines, says its members have no incentive to cancel or delay flights. The organization released charts seeking to explain the reason for problems, highlighting the role played by weather and issues at air traffic control facilities run by the FAA. On Tuesday, the FAA released its own charts, a sign that this summer could again see finger pointing between the government and the industry. It sought to explain how delays chalked up to problems within the nation's airspace are largely due to weather. The agency said it plans to regularly update the figures in the coming months. The FAA warned of staff shortages in trying to head off summer delays. So what does the data show? Airlines are required to tell the Transportation Department why flights were delayed or canceled. The figures have been published through February, showing a few clear trends as the industry has recovered from the hammer blow delivered by the coronavirus pandemic in early 2020. The biggest cause of canceled flights is indeed weather.
Yeah.
That would be a big duh.
Right.
According to the data, in 21 and 2022, there were issues within the airline's control that were a greater share of the reasons a flight were canceled, jumping from about 25% to almost 40%. And you could say staffing was a huge part of that, as you remember, post-COVID coming back.
Right.
At the same time, the share of canceled flights attributed to airspace issues, some of which were the FAA's responsibility, has declined as a percentage but there was a problem, as we don't know there. The federal data also shows that the overall rate of flight cancellations was slightly higher in 21 and 22 than in the 2 years before the pandemic, just slightly higher. And you think with all the staffing shortages that they had, remember that in 2021 and 22?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even up to last year, and even now this summer.
I was going to say, I think that's still the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says the winter of 21 saw a major spike in the Omicron variant swept through the airline workforce. Carriers are taking responsibility for the challenges within our control and continue working diligently to improve operational reliability, Airlines for America said in a statement, and then they talk about recruiting new workers. I will say this, though. I mean, this had come out earlier. Who was it? What airline actually came out and said, flying through New York this summer is going to be terrible because of staffing shortages of air traffic controllers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think, and I remember on a couple of flights actually being delayed, and not long. One of them was about waiting to get fuel. And the captain actually said, we're short-staffed on the ground, and so we're, having to wait a little bit longer for fuel. And I think those staffing shortages throughout the industry, throughout the entire, if you think about the entire infrastructure set up for flight is commercial flight, then you and if you've been doing it at all in the last couple of years, you understand that. But I think there's still a shortage. So now, my question would be, with this regulation coming down, what kind of standard are they going to put in place for the airlines proving that it wasn't their fault? Now, common sense will tell you, well, if there's a storm there, they can document that. But they're going to have to document that. Along the way, they're going to have to show. Now, that's already in place to a certain extent because we still have, or we already have regulations about sitting on the tarmac for so long and, a certain period of time and everything else. But this adds to it in terms of what the airlines are going to have to pay out, reimburse and pay out to people, what's their fault and what isn't their fault. Look, it's a very imperfect system. But I think what you touched on and what was said in this article from the beginning is there's no incentive for the airlines to delay a flight. They have no incentive to do that. Cost incentive. They just don't. So in terms, and also making something good, they have every incentive in rebuilding that trust immediately.
And I would say, and it isn't a huge amount, but when you look at the airline issues that have gone up since 2019, everything was through COVID, and of course there were issues all related to COVID, even now. But you see, as 2022, it's starting to go down. Even in 2023, the number of airline issues, but staffing was huge the last couple, and you're still seeing it now, which is why probably you're not seeing as many staffing issues right now, because they've canceled flights.
Right.
And they're canceling some random flights. I mean, there's some flights where, I take the direct flight when I go see my dad in Buffalo, but all of a sudden, like a Monday during the summer, they don't have it. But the rest of the week they do, and the next Monday they have it. They're just cutting out flights. It's not like they're cutting out an entire section of flight. They'll pick days and say, this flight, we're not going to fly that day on this route.
And I wonder if it has to do with shortage of personnel and crews, and
probably,
their hours of service for flight crews have changed. And does that have to, can they work that far ahead and figure the clock to the point that, look, we're not going to have the staff necessary? I don't know, but that definitely has an impact. I don't know if I don't know if it's what's going on there, but
they have late arriving aircraft, but they don't say what the cause of that is in the chart. Well, late arriving aircraft can be weather. The majority probably of the times is weather.
Yeah.
So is that airline issues, or is that government issues? I don't know. I mean, if one thing happens, if systems go out at one airport, then every other airport you're going to be delayed.
Right. And if you've got weather, inclement weather, in other parts of the country, it can affect your flights, halfway across the country. That happens all the time. So you can be sitting there at the gate, looking at sunny and mild, weather conditions, but the weather is blamed for a delay. Happens all the time. And I don't know. I mean, look, it comes down to this overall, very easy to say, because this is exactly what happens. More regulation will cost. And the cost is on you.
I think the biggest concern from people right now, because like I said, except for business flyers, I fly as much as anybody who's not a business flyer. And last thing I'm worried about is, last thing on my mind from somebody who flies all the time is, will they give me the proper compensation?
Right.
I'm always,
you want to get there.
I want to get there.
Right.
However I get there, that's what I want. And will they have enough alcohol on the flight?
Are they going to be able to find the alcohol in my carry-on?
No, but but the biggest thing that I have seen that probably most people are concerned about is the cost of airline flights. I mean, the flight that I fly in is about 20% greater than it was probably last year or the year before. And they're up 17%. We know that. And that reflects it. That is an issue that hits the bottom line. That and hotels. Hotels are hotels,
car rentals and
car rentals. Not as much car rentals right now. They were, but now they're not as much anymore. Car rentals have sort of moderated. My gosh, there was a hotel room that I paid that I stayed in just a couple of weeks ago, $130. It was $205 now, and I checked last year, and it was basically $130 a year, with taxes and everything else. Well, gosh, that's up a huge amount for a hotel. So you look at that for vacations; those are the things that people are looking at. And airline flights are expensive right now. Now, there are some markets in Florida where they haven't gone up as much, but for the most part, you're flying to other parts of the country. You're like, sorry, can't go this year.
Right.
And that, to me, is probably a big... But again, this is an administration where inflation seems to mean nothing to them. You think about it. Inflation doesn't mean a damn thing to the Biden administration.
No, it doesn't. And
it never has.
Instead of dealing with inflation, they're dealing with an issue that affects a very small portion of the country.
Yeah.
Most people don't fly on a regular basis.
Yep.
They don't. And this affects them maybe once a year.
Well, that's why you had the press saying, why are you covering?
What are you doing?
What are you doing covering this and then walking around and not answering questions, turns around and walks away? What with everything? And there were probably 5-6 reporters the other day that was asking Karine Jean-Pierre, why are you covering this?
Right.
There's so many other major problems. The border's about to burst. You know, I mean,
right.
Inflation is through the roof. And that was their point. You're talking about something that affects very few people. Not that the FAA shouldn't be addressing it, but you're talking about the president and what his focus is on a day where they view all these other huge topics going on. And it's almost as if, well, the president doesn't want to talk about that. He'll talk about something that really doesn't have great interest.
Right.
Because it affects so relatively few people. Even though when it happens, it seems like it's affecting hundreds of thousands for that day, and it is.
Yeah, especially with what happened in December with Southwest.
Right.
Well, you're talking about Christmas time.
Exactly.
So,
but still,
that's a huge travel week.
But still, it's only a very small minority of people at that point. 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. He's Eric Harley. Big news day.
It's going to be it's going to start first thing in the morning and pretty much go all day, all the way through the evening.
Yeah, because we start at 9 a.m. Eastern with the Comer press conference.
Then the noon deadline by the for the FBI to hand over the document,
and then Trump and the town hall meeting on CNN.
Inflation numbers for April coming out, which may not be. Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the what'd you say before when the projections are?
They're right at where the month before was, where March numbers were, with the exception, I think, of core CPI year over year, which the median forecast is for it to be slightly down, but that's coming out later today. Let's see here. The median forecast essentially is to hold spot on with the prior month. So that would mean CPI month over month at 0.1, core CPI month over month at 0.4, CPI year over year. I'm sorry, CPI year over year 5. At 5%, and core CPI year over year at 5.5, which would be down slightly from the 5.6 in the prior month, year over year. So, if we'll see. That may not be that may be already priced in, and I don't know how many people are, most people aren't paying attention to that month to month because this is something from April, as we've said, they've already paid the price for those goods in April. So, what's coming out Thursday is the producer price index, and that will be interesting to watch, but we'll see where it goes. But, yeah, it's going to be an entire news day, and I really think the Comer thing is going to get some attention. Again, the question, will the media, the liberal media, the mainstream media, give it any attention throughout the day?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.